My name is Margaret Grant, though anyone who has known me longer than a week simply calls me Maggie. I've lived in the same small weather-beaten house on Willow Street for nearly 40 years. The porch creaks when it's tired, the attic groans when it rains, and the kitchen windows rattle whenever the wind comes in from the east. It's not glamorous, but it is mine. And for most of my life it was quiet, too quiet some would say. Until the day my daughter arrived on my doorstep with trembling hands, frantic eyes, and 3 small children clinging to her like frightened ducklings. That day is carved into my memory with the precision of a knife. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that feels heavy on your shoulders. I was in the kitchen steeping chamomile tea when I heard the rapid footsteps pounding up my front steps. Before I could wipe my hands on a towel, the door swung open without a knock. Only one person in the world would enter my home like that, Melissa. She stood there soaking wet, hair pasted against her cheeks, mascara streaked, breathing fast as if she had run the entire way. In her arms were Emma and Lila, and little Noah stood beside her, gripping the loose fabric of her coat sleeve. His eyes were wide and confused. "Mom," she gasped, "I need you to watch them. Just for an hour." An hour. I remember those words too well. I blinked, confused but not suspicious, not yet. Melissa had always been a bit scattered. She had struggled her whole life to find her place, to hold steady work, to pick stable friends. But she loved her kids, or so I believed. "Of course," I said gently, reaching for baby Emma first. "Where are you going?" She opened her mouth, but her voice faltered. "It's something important. I'll explain later. Please." Her desperation was palpable. For a moment I wanted to press more. Ask where she was going, why she looked so shaken, why her hands were trembling so badly that her keys fell to the floor. But the children came first. They were tired, hungry-looking, and in need of comfort. "Go," I urged. "I'll take care of them." She nodded, but she didn't hug them goodbye. That was the first sign that something wasn't right. Melissa had always been affectionate, at least toward the children. But now she simply backed away, turned and hurried down the steps. "Melissa," I called after her. "Be careful. And call me when you're on your way back." She lifted a hand without turning around. That was the last time I saw her for 13 years. The first hour passed quickly. I fed the children, changed Emma, settled them onto the living room rug with toys. I kept glancing at the clock, expecting to hear her footsteps rushing back in. The second hour crawled. By the third I tried calling her. 5 times. No answer. By evening worry began blooming in my chest like a slow, painful flower. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I bathed the children, put them to sleep, and sat on the edge of my bed staring at my phone. I told myself she'd call in the morning. Morning came. No Melissa. By the next day, fear had fully replaced frustration. Called hospitals, police, friends, her workplace. No one had seen or heard from her. It wasn't until the third day, while searching for extra blankets, that I found it. An envelope wedged into the side of Emma's diaper bag. My name was written on it in Melissa's handwriting. My heart hammered. Still, I didn't open it. I wasn't ready. Because opening it meant accepting the truth that was already whispering at the edges of my heart. Melissa didn't leave for an hour. She left for good. The first week after Melissa disappeared was a blur of worry, fear, and sleepless nights. Every knock at the door made my heart jump. Every unknown number on my phone felt like it might finally be her. But the days slipped by quietly, cruelly, and the world seemed determined to continue turning even while mine had stopped. When a month passed with no sign of her, I stopped pretending she'd walk through the front door. I folded her children's tiny clothes, cooked their meals, and rocked them to sleep each night, slowly accepting that the task left to me wasn't temporary. It was permanent. The house that had once echoed with nothing more than the tick-tock of my old wall clock suddenly overflowed with noise. Soft baby cries, squeaky toys, little feet pattering across the hall, giggles, arguments, and endless questions. The silence that used to haunt me became something I almost feared losing. Life didn't become easier, but it became fuller. Raising 3 children in my 60s was a test of endurance and love. I had aching joints, thinning patience, and far too many nights spent staring at unpaid bills. But somehow, even on my worst days, there was always a reason to keep going. Noah became my little helper first. He was 7 when Melissa left him on my doorstep, but he grew up fast, too fast. He insisted on carrying grocery bags, holding doors for me, helping bathe his sisters. "Grandma, I'll do it," he would say, sounding so grown up that it broke my heart. But I always reminded him, "You're a child, sweetheart. Let me be the grown-up." He would smile, but I could see he never really believed me. Lila, fiery little Lila, blossomed into a whirlwind of laughter and questions. She would drag her stuffed animals all over the house, telling them stories she had created all on her own. One day she told me, "Grandma, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house with stairs that don't squeak." I laughed so hard I cried. She didn't know how precious that promise was to me. And baby Emma, my quiet shadow, she grew up with her head tucked under my chin. She was clingy, always seeking warmth, perhaps sensing the emptiness her mother left behind. She would sit beside me for hours, drawing crooked hearts or tiny stick figures with messy hair. She called me Mama Grandma for the longest time, until she was old enough to understand the difference. Money was always tight. I returned to cleaning houses, something I had done decades ago, and I sold handmade quilts at the local craft market. Every penny mattered. Sometimes I would skip meals so the children didn't have to. But they never knew that, not then, not ever. Despite the struggle, our home was warm. We built our own traditions. Friday night pancakes, each shaped like a letter of their names. Sunday porch reading, even when the breeze was cold. Christmas cookies baked with more sprinkles than dough. Birthday treasure hunts in the backyard, even if the treasure was just dollar store trinkets wrapped in tissue. I didn't let bitterness grow in the corners of our life. And I never ever spoke badly of Melissa. When the kids asked why she left or where she was, I always said the same thing. She had trouble she didn't want you to carry. Sometimes I could see the questions burning in their eyes, especially as they grew older. But they accepted my answer because they trusted me. That trust became my anchor, my greatest accomplishment, and my deepest responsibility. 13 years passed like that, slowly, then suddenly. Noah grew taller than me. Lila learned to braid her hair and stand up for herself. Emma became a quiet but fierce young woman with kindness stitched into her bones. I raised them as best as an imperfect woman could. I gave them my years, my strength, and everything I had left. And although I rarely admitted it, not even to myself, there were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if Melissa was alive, if she felt regret, or if she ever thought of her children. Then one day the past returned to my doorstep. But this time it didn't knock. It demanded. 13 years had passed since Melissa vanished. Years of scraped knees, school plays, late-night fevers, forgotten lunchboxes, and quiet moments on the porch where the children leaned on me as we watched the sun dip behind the trees of Willow Street. I thought the worst was behind us. I thought the pain Melissa left would stay tucked away like the sealed envelope I still kept hidden in my jewelry box. I was wrong. The morning she returned was sunny, strangely bright for a day I would later remember as one of the darkest in my life. I had just finished watering the garden when a black SUV pulled into my driveway. It was too sleek, too polished to belong to anyone I knew. For a moment, I thought someone had driven to the wrong house. Then the back door opened. Melissa stepped out. She looked different. Older, of course, but not worn down the way I expected someone to look after abandoning 3 children for over a decade. Her hair was neatly styled. Her makeup was flawless. Her clothes were expensive, far more expensive than anything she used to wear. And her expression was cold, like the warmth had been drained from her long ago. "Mom," she said, her voice flat. I hadn't heard her call me that since she was a teenager. Before I could speak, the passenger door opened and a tall man in a tailored suit emerged. He carried a leather briefcase and adjusted his tie with practiced confidence. He looked at me the way a person looks at a problem they're about to solve. "Mrs. Grant?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "I am attorney James Corwood, representing Melissa Grant." He spoke briskly, as if reciting lines he'd practiced. "We're here regarding the unlawful custody of her 3 children." The world seemed to tilt. "Unlawful what?" I whispered. Melissa stepped forward, crossing her arms tightly. "You took them from me," she said, her jaw clenched. "You kidnapped them. For 13 years. For a moment, everything inside me went silent. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. I looked at her, searching her face for any hint of remorse, guilt, or even hesitation. But there was nothing. "You left them with me," I breathed. You said you needed an hour. Melissa, you never came back. I called hospitals, police. That's not what I told my lawyer, she cut in sharply. You wouldn't give them back. You manipulated them. You. I held up a trembling hand. Stop. Just stop. My grandchildren, now teenagers, had gathered on the porch. Confusion clouded their faces. Noah looked stunned. Lila looked hurt. Emma looked angry. They had heard enough to understand something terrible was happening. Melissa avoided their eyes. We'll settle this formally, her lawyer said. In court. My client is seeking full custody and damages for emotional distress. Damages. Emotional distress. The words felt like punches. They left as quickly as they came, leaving tire marks on my driveway and a hollow ache settling into my chest. The court date approached like a storm cloud. I barely slept. The children were furious, but I asked them not to lash out. Let the truth speak, I told them. Yet inside I was terrified. I had no documents, no witnesses, no proof that Melissa had abandoned her children. I only had the envelope, the one I hadn't opened for 13 years. But even that felt fragile. What if it didn't say what I hoped? The courtroom was cold. Colder than any place I'd ever been. Melissa sat across from me looking collected, rehearsed. Her lawyer spoke with smooth certainty, claiming I had taken advantage of a vulnerable young mother and withheld her children to satisfy my desire for control. Every sentence carved deeper wounds into my heart. Then it was my turn. I told the truth gently, calmly. I spoke of her disappearance, of my desperate search, of raising the children alone. But without proof, the truth felt weak. Floating. Hands shaking, I reached into my purse and placed the unopened envelope on the judge's bench. This, I said softly, was left in the diaper bag the day she left. I've never opened it. The judge lifted his brows. Never. Never. He opened it carefully, unfolding the paper inside. His eyes moved across the page, slowly at first, then faster, widening with each line. He exhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair. Finally, he looked at me. Mrs. Grant, do the children know about this letter? I swallowed hard. Not yet. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Even Melissa looked unsure for the first time. And as the judge prepared his next words, I realized the truth was finally stepping into the light. And it was far brighter than Melissa expected. The courtroom was silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath as the judge studied the envelope I had left on the bench. Melissa's confident posture faltered for the first time since she arrived. Her lawyer's sharp eyes darted nervously between the judge and me. It was as if the entire room sensed that something monumental was about to unfold. The judge finally spoke, his voice low but steady. Mrs. Grant, do the children know about this letter? I swallowed and looked at my grandchildren seated behind me. They were older now, teenagers with eyes that mirrored both innocence and the weariness of someone who had been through a storm too soon. Noah, tall and protective, Lila, fiery and perceptive, and Emma, quiet but sharp, all stared at me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Not yet, I said softly, my voice trembling. But they will. The judge nodded and unfolded the letter. He read in silence, and his expression shifted in ways that were impossible to hide. First came disbelief, then anger, and finally a profound understanding. He looked at Melissa, then back at me. The paper trembled slightly in his hands, though I knew he had steadied it before the court could see. The contents of the letter were simple, yet they carried the weight of years. Melissa had written that she had felt incapable of raising her children. She admitted that she had been scared, overwhelmed, and uncertain of her own strength. She had intended to leave and never return, leaving the children in my care. She had trusted me, she said, to raise them and love them, and she had asked forgiveness for leaving them behind. I had waited 13 years to hear that truth. And now, the silence in the courtroom made the weight of her betrayal, and my vindication, almost tangible. The judge set the letter down and turned to Melissa. Based on this evidence, it is clear that the children were left in the lawful care of Mrs. Grant with the express knowledge of their mother. Any claims of unlawful custody are dismissed. Melissa's face drained of color. She opened her mouth to protest, but the judge cut her off. Furthermore, he continued, pursuing false claims in court can have legal consequences. You are warned to reconsider any future attempts to manipulate the court and your children. My grandchildren stared at me wide-eyed. I hadn't spoken a word yet. I simply let them absorb the moment. Noah's hand found mine, squeezing gently. Lila's lip trembled, and Emma's eyes glistened with tears she tried to hide. Later that evening, we sat together in the living room, the letter laid out before us. I told them everything, not to shame Melissa, but to set the record straight. I explained that she had not abandoned them out of malice, but because she could not be the mother they needed. I showed them the words she had written and the truth behind them. There were tears, many tears, but also relief. Relief that they had been loved and protected all these years. Relief that the truth had finally come to light. And slowly, one by one, they hugged me. Noah whispered, "Grandma, you didn't kidnap us. You saved us." Lila added, "You're the one who really raised us. You're our family." Emma, holding my hand tightly, said simply, "We know now and we love you for it." Melissa left town shortly afterward, her lawyer trailing behind her like a shadow of failed authority. She didn't speak to the children again. She didn't try to regain their trust. And I didn't wait for her. I had something far greater. 3 children who had chosen me, whose loyalty had been earned through love, sacrifice, and truth. That night I sat on the porch, watching the stars blink softly above our quiet street. My heart ached for what had been lost, but it was also full of gratitude, relief, and triumph. My revenge had not been born of anger or vengeance, but of love. I had endured betrayal, heartbreak, and accusation. I had been patient, strong, and unwavering. And in the end, the world saw the truth, my grandchildren embraced it, and justice, quiet, subtle, perfect justice, was served. I smiled, brushing a tear from my cheek, and whispered into the night, "We are safe. We are home. And we are loved." That, I realized, was all the revenge I ever wanted.